Well, coming off the roaring success of my last video, I thought I would add one more. That's a joke. Here we are with another video, and I didn't think I would be making another one so soon. Honestly, I didn't, because this is just a hobby and I upload when I can, which isn't very often. The reason why I am making this video is because I actually quite like Game of Thrones as it stands, and I see so many YouTubers ranting about it, particularly Season 7. Oh, they do not like it at all. I used the word hate in my title originally, but I realized that that might be too strong of a word, so I changed it to a word I feel is more appropriate. Where was I? Oh yeah, the YouTubers. There's nothing but strong dislike for the creators David and Daniel, and the stories that unfolded throughout the preceding seasons once the resource material ran out. Before I get into that, let me just say that I am a fan of Game of Thrones. I have been watching since the beginning, and I have every season so far on Blu-ray. Now, I'm not a die-hard fan, nor am I intimately attached to the lore, and I haven't read the books. Probably not going to either. I would rather read well-illustrated Punisher comic books. Depending on how close you are to the world within the books that George has so carefully crafted, you could judge me to be a casual fan of Game of Thrones, and I would agree with that. Recently, I couldn't remember what Cersei's home is called, or who Lisa Arryn is, or even the hole in the floor that she was pushed through. I googled it and now I know it's called the Moon Door. From what I can gather from YouTubers who never fail to voice their impassioned opinions about this show, they feel that problems arose around the start of Season 6 or late in Season 5. These problems that exist are plentiful and are too significant not to notice. Even I notice things that don't always add up, like the timing of events within Season 7 Episode 6. Something else that isn't well established is Sansa's motivations. I feel her actions don't add up either, and her storyline with Arya had little clarity. That isn't the mark of good writing. I kind of feel bad for Sansa, actually, as Littlefinger just wouldn't leave her alone for the most part. He seriously needed something better to do than annoy Sansa constantly. I won't get into the problems that are apparent to the more savvy viewer because that isn't the point of this video. But I will say that despite all that these YouTubers find wrong or questionable within the show, they still continue to watch. So if the quality of the show and the stories contained in each season has decreased to the point of frustration, then why do these YouTubers keep watching it? Why don't they stop watching and save themselves the heartache and constant face palming? Why don't they realize that the show is only going to keep disappointing them and that they'd be better off not watching it at all? Makes sense, doesn't it? I think they keep watching the show and uploading videos about it, reviewing each episode, stridently voicing their opinions throughout, because without it, well, what would they do? They probably feel that they just have to talk about it online, to review each episode, and if they didn't do this, they would not know what to do with themselves. If they simply stopped watching, what then for their YouTube channel? Yes, they're all smart enough to talk and opine about other shows and other subjects, but they cannot contain themselves when Game of Thrones displeases them. There are many analogies I could use to describe the ironic nature of this repeated act by these YouTubers, but I think a scene from Star Trek The Next Generation perfectly illustrates my point. This particular scene involves Data drinking something new from Focus 3, and after he imbibes, he utters that he hates the taste, but when he's offered more, he gleefully accepts. These YouTubers don't like the show, or they hate it, but they still continue to consume it. Though you could argue that these YouTubers don't entirely or exactly hate the show, they are, however, often left frustrated and deeply, profoundly disappointed after every episode. So again, why don't they just stop watching? Why do they continue to consume this show? Why do they torture themselves? Here's a crazy thought. Why don't they just move on to a new show, leaving it to the more satisfied viewers? There are many YouTube channels I've come across while searching for info regarding Season 7, and the majority of the content therein is about how Game of Thrones isn't what it used to be. I understand that this show holds a special place in these YouTubers' hearts, and they want it to be what they want it to be, but surely if they are only unhappy and feeling let down episode after episode, year after year, season after season, surely, they would come to the realization that sticking with the show will only lead to rising disappointment. I guess their channels depend on the show's continued airing, and without it, they'd have to talk about something else. Look, I could say the same thing about Arrow. The consensus of that show is that the first 2 seasons are great, but the following seasons are hot garbage. Someone else's words, not mine. And the most recently aired season, number 6, tried its hardest to get back on track after vociferous fans took to Twitter and other forms of social media expressing their disappointment. They judged DC's long-running show with searing criticism, and DC had no choice but to reevaluate. Not only was DC subject to that reaction from their viewers and fans, they had to deal with sarcasm, scathing and ironic memes, and strong language. Now what if the show's longtime fans had just stopped watching? Crazy, I know, but what if? Millions of these viewers are YouTubers as well. And what if they simply said, nope, not gonna watch anymore, and that was that? Again, this is a crazy notion, right? That you stop watching something that you feel is no longer satisfying? No, not for these YouTubers, and they're going to continue making videos expressing their disapproval until Game of Thrones ends, and then they will find another show to logically and passionately dismantle. Seeing as no one watches my channel, and I have next to 0 subscribers, I am going to name YouTubers who have inspired me to make this video. They are as follows: Raver Rants, The Mad Villain, Ralph the Movie Maker, Bandit Incorporated, Rice Duke, The Distributist, Overdue Review, Black Goat of Cohor, Swinehound, Preston Jacobs, who is actually quite the knowledgeable and creative viewer / YouTuber, and lastly, the YouTuber who appears to hold the most amount of knowledge of the Game of Thrones lore, Ideas of Ice and Fire. These YouTubers, who all have merit in their arguments, motivated me to record these words. I've watched many videos from each of them and listened to their arguments and their displeasure with the show that binds them. You see, this Game of Thrones means so much to them, and when they see that the showrunners and producers are not giving it the respect that it so rightfully deserves, they react predictably and use their social media platforms to adamantly decry it. Seeing the lengths they go to in order to make videos discussing the show and voicing their displeasure, this makes me wonder what they'd do if they didn't have access to today's technology. Think about it for a moment. Imagine if they were as old as they are now, but the year is 1980 something. What would they do? Write a paper? Write a letter? Write an article? Start a radio show? Some of these YouTubers were not even born in the 80s like I was. Just a thought. So, where do we go from here? Well, for starters, Game of Thrones is going to end next year. The whole saga will finally finish up, and fans will find themselves craving a new show to watch in its stead. What will happen to these YouTubers if they have no well-known show to complain about? What will some of them rant about? Well, there will always be something, won't there? They have a variety of interests, like Ralph the Movie Maker with his movie reviews, and Ideas of Ice and Fire with his Doom talk. I can't imagine watching a show that disappoints me week after week. Why do that to yourself? Does your love for the resource material command you to keep tuning in? I don't expect any of the YouTubers I've named to acknowledge my existence, but I'll pose the questions anyway. Just like Bill Burr says about his own podcast, no one listens to my opinions or viewpoints. Regardless, if a show does not satisfy you, then the best response is to not watch it. I could keep going about this particular topic, but I think I've made my point. Doesn't change a damn thing, but hey, I have the technology to make this video, so why not? The love or immense affinity for Game of Thrones that seemingly consumes these YouTubers. Well, you know, it must urge them. It has to encourage them, to keep them watching it no matter what, and nothing anyone says can interfere or change this mentality. I will be watching Season 8 of Game of Thrones, and I'm sure that despite the inconsistencies and illogical events, I'll still enjoy it. Hopefully, these YouTubers will too, but I honestly doubt it, especially Raver Rants. Thanks for watching.